Previously on Ballz.
All right, he's at the airport in Cape Town. He's not arriving, he's leaving. Aren't you going the wrong way, Campo?
Back to Durban, mate. Back to the sunny city.
The sunny winter city, where it's the winters are beautiful and much better than Cape Town's. What are you doing in Cape Town?
Believe it or not, I've been down here. Came down on Friday, which was beautiful and rainy and cold, and I was down for an IRB coaching course to find optimising talents. So to give a bit of a speech on talents and what do you do with them and how you look after them and how you make sure you don't get rid of their flair.
All right, cool. That's done in Cape Town. So as soon as they all reach a certain point, they'll all be bought by the Bulls.
Well, it's actually all international coaches. There's Chileans, Fijians, Samoans, Argentinians. So it's basically for second-tier countries who obviously haven't got the resources that first-tier countries have got. So really just give them an idea of, what sort of resources they can use in their own country.
Okay, cool. There we go. Getting the expertise of World Cup winner David Campese, and we have him here on the show every Monday on the Flush Out. Welcome again today. Nice little glass of wine going there at the airport, I hope.
Well, it's a bit difficult, I think, but I'm sure I can find one somewhere.
Come on, you're an Aussie. You always find a way.
Oh, give me a break. not after watching Mr. Scott yesterday. My goodness, eh?
We weren't going to bring it up, Campo.
Oh, yeah, but I know you're going to. I'm not silly.
We weren't going to mention it at all. We were just going to carry on straight into the rugby.
Yeah, I bet you were. But I mean, we've got to talk about rugby as well, are we? Jeez.
I promise you, none of us sat here on the 18th hole begging that ball to go into the pot bunker. None of us did.
But I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? That it doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, it's in front of you. It's all there, and you make some bad mistakes and you lose.
It's the pressure of a major, and also the fact that he wasn't one. I was just saying a little earlier on. We were sitting there going, we've seen everyone bogeying the last hole. Only Tiger and Ernie, I think, the two that birdied it. Everyone bogeyed the last hole, double dropped it. They dropped 17 as well. Tough couple of holes if he has. You just need one moment, like that short little putt he missed, to get you off kilter as far as your concentration goes. You start to think about things going wrong. We've seen it with so many guys before. I mean, it happened to Greg Norman. It's happened to obviously Jean van der Velde, but I mean Greg Norman was I think a key guy who who's been there, he's done it, he's won majors, and it even happened to him.
Yeah, look, it's quite interesting because you don't really know. I mean, I said to my wife Lara, if you have a think about it, I mean, you get up there, and I've played in pro-ams, how nerve-wracking it is, everyone just watching you. And these guys, it's got to be a talent, And I mean, the Big Easy, obviously, it was fantastic for him, and you could see, he was just there, and at the start of the day, I think the commentator was saying, I think 68 is going to be the best. I can't see anything else. And he did what it had to be done. And that's it. It's not over until the fat lady sings. And unfortunately for Mr. Scott, he last year I can remember in an interview somewhere he was talking about he thinks he can be number one. And comments like that don't really help you. It comes back and bites you on the backside sometimes. And he was there, all in front of him. All he had to do was par the last, and it's just pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is pressure. I think the comment that he look, Ernie said he will win another one. I think one of the commentators said it's going to take him a long time to get over this. I mean, we saw with Rory McIlroy when he blew he blew the
Masters.
The Masters, came back, won the US Open. So I mean, these young guys, I think they, especially probably the mental conditioning now is a little bit better, where they can get over things like this and get back into the fray and go and win. Adam Scott is a talented guy, and he should really be a major champion at some stage. I mean, there's no doubt in that.
Look, it is, but I mean, the thing is, it's there. I mean, that's the difference between being a world-class golfer or ordinary golfer, isn't it? It's there in front of you. All you got to do is, and sometimes it's quite interesting also, Darren, if you compare to rugby players or teams, and if you're going to take a defensive option into a game and go for the easy points, somewhere down the line it's going to come back and bite you. Sometimes you've still got to attack. Sometimes attack's the best form of defence. And we saw that obviously with the Blue Bulls. I mean, they kicked the ball away aimlessly on that day against the Crusaders. I mean, you're never going to have a chance.
Yeah, well, that's what you're here for. Let's turn our attention to the rugby then. And did you call it? Did you call these two results on Monday last week?
I think I did go for the Crusaders.
Yeah.
And I think I did. Did I go for the Sharks?
You said the Sharks just to edge it without Quade Cooper there for the Reds.
There we go. Quade Cooper was actually on the field and still didn't help, did he?
Yeah. He must feel like this is where he feels like an absolute prat for that one-game suspension now, because I think he's probably sitting here hoping or thinking the guys will get him through it and he'll be back in the fray again. But the Reds are gone, defending champions gone, all South African semi-final, all New Zealand semi-final. First. We'll talk about the selection of referees in just a moment. First of all, let's talk about the games this weekend. The Bulls, I was saying to the guys earlier, you don't lose, and I mean, you guys would have experienced it. I know the All Blacks did, when Sean Fitzpatrick's and the Zinzan Brooks disappeared. You don't replace 7 players of the caliber of Matfield and Buerta and Rousseau and all of these guys in a year and go and win a competition like Super Rugby the next year.
No, you don't. And I think the biggest problem with the Bulls is they don't really normally like travelling anyway. And, you travel around halfway around the world for one game, and it's cold. You could see the guys turned up and it was freezing there. And obviously the Blue Bulls aren't used to that condition. And, they just didn't turn up. You cannot afford to give the Crusaders at home an advantage, And what I saw of the game was it was just aimless kicking. They just didn't turn up, know. And, and the thing is that... Again, if they were actually smart and actually realised the Saturday before, okay, well, if we do this, we'll go to Queensland instead. But they didn't, and they played the Crusaders, and unfortunately, they got their backsides kicked. And I must say, Morné Steyn didn't play well. He hasn't played well for a couple of weeks now, and it doesn't help when your star players don't perform when the pressure's on.
All right, so they're gone. Crusaders are there, as they generally tend to be at this time of the season. But I've just got a funny, I don't know, I'm looking at that semi-final going, I think the Chiefs are going to actually pull it through and beat the Crusaders this weekend. Do you agree?
I'm not sure. I think that with Dan Carter around, obviously, they've got some good players there. I don't know if Reed's playing. I think he's a big loss for the Crusaders. I think he's a star player, even though Richie McCaw's standing up to be counted. But again, the Chiefs have had a week off, And again, mental preparation and physicality, having a week off, these guys are used to having another game. I suppose that they're playing at home, no travel, so really it's and we did see a couple of weeks ago when the Chiefs tried to pull the game off and the Crusaders pulled through. Again, Sonny Bill Williams is probably looking at that game and said, if I passed the ball we wouldn't be in this situation, but they are, so it's going to be a tough game. And the two teams are not going to just go for the easy points. They're going to throw the ball around. They're going to entertain because they both want to win.
As far as the Sharks go, let's talk about this scenario first of all. Despite the rugby they played, which was some of the best rugby we've seen from them this season, and they really are putting together. They kind of put together two halves this time. Even though the second one was a great defensive effort, they had to come back. Or they played in South Africa, had to go over to Brisbane. They've got to come back now, playing Cape Town, and if they win that game, they've got to go back and go and play in New Zealand. Can any team handle that kind of travel in the last 3 weeks of a competition?
No, because I think we saw last year with the Crusaders did very similar. They didn't play a home game, but I think they beat the Stormers in South Africa. Then they had to travel back to Australia, and they were physically a week out. If it was an extra week, they would have beat the Reds, but they didn't. And it's just too much. If you think about time zones, you really don't know where you're going. It doesn't matter what medical advice you get. It is hard coming. It's probably harder to go in from here to Australia because of the time difference. And you get over that. So it takes me. It'll take about 4 or 5 days. And you're playing a rugby game. It doesn't really help. And that's unfortunately the nature of the beast. And that's why they say, you come first and second, you've got all the advantages, all you've got to do is win.
Yeah.
But you must say, the Sharks did play some great rugby. I actually thought, watching the Reds, I thought they would have gone close, but unfortunately they lost Lucas early. They had Genia go to number 10. There was talks on Plumtree, blamed Hugh McKenzie for the Sharks winning in the papers, saying he made a big mistake by putting Genia at number 10. But unfortunately, Hugh McKenzie said, well, we tried Harris early this year and we couldn't score tries.
Yeah.
So he had to make a decision. I thought it was pretty, not poor, but I thought it was very uncalled for where you come around and blame a coach, because I'm sure if the Sharks lose this week and the coach come out and say, well, Plumtree made a big mistake by doing this. Coaches normally look after each other. But the Sharks did play very well and they deserved the win. The Reds were lucky to be there. If you think about it, they didn't play well all year. lost a lot of players. You know, and as I said, you know, if the Brumbies won, it would have been a different story. But again, they're out, and you know, there's always next year.
Yeah. Just an aside here, Johnny.
Yeah.
Those keys, you just have to touch them. Stop hammering away at them. We can hear you typing while Campos. That's very rude.
Do you want to know what he's typing?
Yeah,
What is he typing?
He's requesting leave. He's typing out a leave
his
application.
leave form.
Yeah,
David's got to
just
catch a flight now. Stop
Okay,
it.
sorry.
Can I just ask David a question quickly? On Twitter, Campo, you were copying a bit of stick from some of the newspapers in Australia about some comments that you made. What was that all about?
No, I wasn't copying the stick. I just read an article, one on Twitter from a journalist saying that Brisbane paper blames Mackenzie for loss. And then I said, well, you know, it's typical Australia, you know, he doesn't play the game. But what it was, then I found out it was actually Plumtree said to a journalist after the game, he thought that Ewan Mackenzie lost the game for Queensland because they put Genia at number 9. That's why the Sharks won.
Genia at 10.
Genia at 10. And that's what the story was. And that's why, that's the story. And people said, well, what did the coach say? And then I realised it was actually what Plumtree had said.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said, I thought it wasn't the best thing to say because coaches, I mean, you won the game, you say, yeah, we won. Obviously, they didn't. You know, if you look at Queensland, they had no number 10. You know, they in Australia we do struggle because we haven't got the talent players where you can just roll them out. And you know, to be fair to Linky, I know he's a great guy and great coach. He's done well to get them to where they are, but also Plumtree's got to be careful because he's got Michalak that plays 10 and 9.
Yeah.
So if someone gets injured, he can play him as well. So it's, you know, but I just thought that's what it was, and I copped it from a lot of people about the Stormers winning. The guy said, I said the Sharks win next week, and he said, no, you're wrong. The Stormers are going to win. We're going to rub him. We're going to score 4 tries. And I said, in your dreams.
How do you see that game going? Obviously, it's well documented the Stormers' lack of try scoring. Now it doesn't matter. You just got to win by a point, and you're through. With the Sharks, the kind of rugby that they're playing at the moment, though, I mean, as we say, best that they've played all season. They started. I mean, they were one half one way, and then kind of struggled another half. But they seem to be able to be putting it together. Do you think that the travel schedule then is going to be the biggest thing counting against them? Because regardless of that, the rugby, the guys like Kankowski, I mean, all their loose forwards, Keegan Daniel are playing. Albert's worked bloody well at lock as well. So, I mean, it's not that their players are all hitting form at the right time. It's just the travel that's going to count against them.
Look, you know, again, coming this way, it's not too bad. You know, it's going the other way. So I'm sure that, you know, as I said, they'll know what to do. I think the thing is that, you know, it's like if they do the Reds. If the Sharks start off on fire and about 10, 15, and I cannot see the Stormers trying to catch up rugby because they can't. They throw the ball around. We saw them against the Rebels. They were throwing the ball around really nearly, and they still couldn't score. You know, they're hoping for penalties, and that's what got them through. They're hoping that the opposition are going to give away penalties all the time, and they're going to kick the penalty goals. But unfortunately, as I said, sometimes attack is the best defence.
Yeah.
I can't see them attacking. Again, I don't know who the referee's going to be.
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a moment because I think it's a bizarre choice.
Yeah, we actually saw. I copped a lot of flack on Twitter about Kaplan as well because, you know, I don't know how many times he spoke to the Sharks players, and I actually said there should have been a yellow card, you know, earlier on because he kept on the 5 times I think they penalised him on the line. You know, and I said to Tupper Henning, who was down here as well, I said, why did they pick a South African referee? And he said, who would you have liked to see? Bryce Lawrence. And I said, no. He said, the Australian referee. Or the next referee is Walsh. Now, Walsh is he Australian or is he New Zealander?
He's Japanese. He went to, I think he's Australian at the moment this week.
Well, we don't really think he's Australian, but anyway. But that's the problem. Who do you pick?
Well, the referees are, and this is bizarre, they've picked Walsh for the South African game, and they've picked Craig Joubert for the New Zealand game. Now, I mean, how stupid is that? Because if there is going to be any kind of favourite, you know, you would find more of it with the South African.
Darren, be careful. You can't say referee.
Come on, it's stupid. I mean, why fly someone out there to go and referee that game?
No, because Darren, what you just said, you've actually said it. Because they don't want, I think, a bit of criticism from last week. The Queensland crowd got very upset and booed Kaplan because of the way he handled a certain situation. Now, by picking Walsh, who's an Australian New Zealander, so they can't say, well, you're biased to the Sharks or you're biased to the Stormers.
But how would they say that with Craig?
Well, they can't do it as well in New Zealand, can they? Well, that's what we're trying to say. That's what happens. You know, they're there to referee, so they're basically saying, well, this is the situation. We've got 2 New Zealand. We'll give a South African. So he can't say and say, well, actually, I want the Storm. I want this to win, so I'll do it. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen that way.
But surely in an age of professionalism, you'd think that the referees would be neutral. Doesn't matter where they ref and who they're reffing.
Well, did you watch the Reds game? Did you think that, you know, if you actually be realistic, and I watched the game, Bismarck's pass to Peterson was a forward pass. Okay, and then if you have a look at the footage, you have a look at a forward pass, right. And then with later in the game, the Queenslanders attacked, and I watched it for about 15 phases. There was about 5 penalties. Normally, after about 2, the referee says, right, mate, sorry, yellow. You know, that might have changed the game a bit, but it didn't. So people start, you know, I'm just saying this. If it was a neutral referee, no one could give a hoot. But that's learned from the Durban as well. It doesn't give a good taste to some people. But unfortunately, that's what some people, supporters look at.
What would suit the New Zealanders better? A final against the Sharks or the final against the Stormers? Obviously a final against the Sharks, and they've got a New Zealand, whatever he says he is, he's a New Zealander refereeing the South African game. So there, I'm not saying he is going to, but I'm saying if the referees are trying to avoid any talk of no one can complain, what happens if the Sharks beat the Stormers and then have to travel to play in New Zealand, which would obviously suit the New Zealanders more? That opens it up for a whole lot of skullduggery if that's what they're trying to avoid.
Well,
so that's nonsense.
We just call on Darren Scott to ref.
Lyndon Bray.
Oh my goodness! Forget about Lyndon Bray.
No, what they do is they pick the best number 1 referee, and I believe Walsh is the best number 1 referee. And as I said, if he's Australian, he hasn't got a problem.
They say.
What? Oh, I disagree with you there.
Well, as I said, like, you know, you speak to certain people, and they will tell you who the number 1 referee is.
How can you say that after 2007, Campo?
That's 2007, but this is not 2007, Darrell.
I cannot believe you've forgiven him.
Hey,
Walsh.
What did he do?
What he didn't do?
Oh yeah, but you can't live in the past. I mean, unfortunately, you know that.
Damn.
You know?
South Africans do.
I'm still trying to get over it. All right, let's
As
get.
I said, you know, a lot of referees said, "Well, typical Australian. They're whinging about, you know, the referees said, what about World Cup 2011?" I said, well, hold on, that was South Africa. This is Super 15.
Yeah.
You're never going to win, are you?
Nah. All right. Well, you better get your flight call. Final question from Simon.
I just want to quickly ask Campo, from the Stormers camp, what do you, as Alistair Coetzee, say to the guys before you play the Sharks? You mentioned that defence will sometimes lose you a game. Stormers playing very defensively. Do Stormers change their tactics ahead of the game? Go out there and throw it around a bit, or do they stick to what's got them this far?
First, I'd go to church on Friday and pray. Secondly, they're not going to throw the ball around because they don't know how to throw the ball around. They're going to play their typical rugby because, as Darren said, you win by 1 point, you win. It doesn't matter. And the thing is, you know, the Sharks have got nothing to lose, really, because they can create opportunities from nothing. They've got some really good ball runners. You've got Bismarck Duplessis up against the Stormers hooker, who's a bit intimidated by Bismarck. So you've got some big players out there who will stand up to be counted. And that's, you know, the Stormers and the Sharks know how they know each other, how they play. But also, I think the Sharks are coming on a bit of a roll. You said they've turned up at the right time of the season, and they can create something out of nothing. And that's what you need. You've got to be careful of every single... JP Peterson, to me, is the outstanding player at the moment. He is absolutely killing them. And again, he's the danger. So if he's up against Applin, Applin's what, 5 foot nothing. JP Peterson's about 6'3" and quick and move. So, you know, you probably see a bit of ball or to Brian O'Bannon. There's a lot of, you know, great matchups out there. It's really, as I said, I can't see the Stormers throwing the ball around. They're just going to plug away, get a penalty here, kick the goal. Hopefully the penalties will get them through the game, and that's what they'll be playing.
So do I spot then a prediction from David Campese of a Sharks Crusaders final in Christchurch?
Well, I think there could be. I think they're the best teams. I think the style of rugby they're playing is fantastic, and that's what you want. You know, you don't really, unfortunately, I'm going to get heaps of Twitters, but you don't really want a boring game in the final. It's the whole season. You want to get the best game, and they're the best teams.
All right. And should that be the result, don't be surprised if a whole lot of people in Cape Town, Stormers fans, want to lynch Steve Walsh for something. saying that he favoured the New Zealand home
again,
final.
the thing is, but if they do lose, and they lose because of the way they played. You can't blame a referee for. You've got to attack, And as I said, they haven't attacked all year, so they're not going to change to attack. The Sharks are a team that can create something out of anything. They've got the players, and they're all hitting form. Ryan Kokoschki is a great runner, and that's what you need compared to the number 8 for the Stormers, whoever it's going to be. That is the difference when you get class players.
Well, Mr. David Campese delaying flight SA 340 to Joburg or Durban.
No, Durban, thank you.
All right. Your flight's about to take off, Campo.
Yeah,
Listen, always great to have you in the flush out. Thanks very much, Campo. Don't forget your invoice, and we'll chat to you again next Monday. Same time.
We'll have some good information next Monday. Huh?
Some good information.
There's a bit of a thing coming out of Australia. A friend of mine told me some interesting news. I'll try and find out what it is and let you know.
What, they're going to win something?
No, they're actually they're going to put me as the forwards coach.
Campo, it's great to chat to you, bud. Have a good flight. We'll chat to you next week. Cheers, man. Bye-bye. David Campese. Interesting. Some interesting news out of Australia next week. I wonder what that might be. Campo will share it with us on the flush out here on Ballz Visual Radio.
We the best on 3. 1, 2, 3. We the best.
2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays live on balls.co.za. Balls.co.za.